But mostly you have the slaughter interface between the humans and the animals, which is what happened at the wet market. Certainly that's where COVID came from, was slaughtering animals. But what has not been reported much yet, there's another coronavirus in China. It preceded this one, and it's called SAD, Severe Acute Diarrhea Syndrome. It's a coronavirus that afflicts pork. In 2018, it killed 24,000 piglets on 4 Chinese farms in just a few days, and that was 2 years ago. You have to wonder if there's a coronavirus that's in pork. And, of course, there's a lot of back and forth trade between China. Pandemics spread, whether they're animal or human. You have to wonder, are these slaughterhouses not just hosting humans who are sick, but animals who are sick?
The Vidal Speaks podcast.
Episode 134, Martha Rosenberg, on how COVID-19 is only one example of the dangers of eating animals. Welcome to Vidal Speaks. My name is Deborah Vidal, former 11-year LPGA golf pro turned classical homeopath, certified plant-based nutritionist, and wellness coach. Each week here on Vidal Speaks, we bring you knowledge, inspiration, or natural remedies to help you take charge of your health and feel your best. I believe health is freedom and knowledge is power, so tuning in each week will give you the power to take steps towards freeing yourself from the chains that hold you back from having the energy to do all you want in life. No matter where you are in your journey of wellness, Vidal Speaks can help. I promise. Hey everybody, it's Vidal here. How are you? And happy Wednesday. And I'm so excited to have you around my table. Yay, and today it's a podcast, which I know everyone out there loves. And I have a very special guest today. And you guys know who it is, because if you've been following me for a while, then you've heard her before. And it is no other than Martha Rosenberg. And we are going to speak today about COVID-19 and the dangers of eating animals and how it's related to COVID-19. So it's really exciting, and I think you guys are going to love it. And one thing I know for sure, you're going to learn a lot. But before we get there, I just want to tell you about some news, and I want to give you my update on a very, very, very special offer for you guys, my podcast listeners, my favorite group of people out there. So I have a very special place for my podcast. I know I'm doing YouTube videos now, and I'm learning and it's cool, but I love my podcast. This is really my favorite. So I wanted to tell you guys that I have a very, very special offer right now that it's kind of what I like to call the quarantine special, because everybody's stuck at home and people are bored, and a lot of people are doing a lot of social media with their friends, or they're learning new languages or doing something. And in my last video that I just put up, I told people maybe they could learn homeopathy, or maybe they could learn how to cook, or maybe improve your cooking 10%, and to make some delicious plant-based meals. And I want to be able to support you with that. So I decided I wanted to do something really crazy and just be able to get out there and help people, because I'm a helper and I'm stuck at home, and I want to be in touch with you guys, and I want to help you guys, and I want to teach you guys. That's my element, and I have so much I can offer you. Really, 25 years I've been in clinical homeopathic practice, and for 25 years I've been studying nutrition and hair tests and everything you can imagine about health, especially nutrition, detox, and homeopathy. Those are actually my real specialties and my true loves, but I've studied every avenue of health you can imagine. I've had a lot of health situations in my own life, so I get sadly experience from that, but no better experience than to have it yourself and learn how to fix it all on your own. So I have so much that I want to share with you guys and teach you guys, from plant-based cooking and vegan recipes and the importance of eating a plant-based diet, to how to detox without feeling sick and making yourself worse, and how important it is to cleanse and detox the body, to learning homeopathy so you guys can learn to treat yourself. So I asked myself, what could I do to offer something to all the people out in the world that are in quarantine that would make them not be able to say no? How could I get the maximum amount of people to come learn from me and that I can teach all these skills that I have, but especially the skill of homeopathy, just to learn a few simple things that you can do and put into your life right now today, not only during this coronavirus pandemic on what you can do to strengthen and boost your immune system and your resistance, but what about if you got sick or your family members? I mean, once you know homeopathy, you will be reaching for your homeopathic remedies before you reach for anything else. That's for sure. So I asked myself, what could I do? And I said, I'm going to make the price so low that nobody can say no. And I've decided to offer it to all you guys for $10 a month. It's the VS Club. It's my online classroom. And it's where we can speak openly and privately. And I can teach you so many things. And for $10 a month, you guys. And most people would spend that on a coffee or some little breakfast thing, even if they can't afford it. So I know it's $10 a month, but I still feel like it's extremely important to charge something because I, in my own practice, have found that when you give things away for free, you don't get people who are serious about learning or healing. And I really want you to put the effort in to make it be important for yourself. So $10 a month is almost free, and I have so much to offer you. I promise you, you guys, this will be $1 million of information that you will never forget and you will always use in your lifetime. So please take me up now and go join the VS Club because I'm going to start on Monday and I want to give you guys from today until Monday to join, and then we're going to do our first official session. So please go right now, and there's 2 ways you can sign up. You can go to the website, and right there on the home page, underneath my banner photo, the next little quadrant of information is about the VS Club, and you can click on Join Now right from there, or you can go to the top tabs, and you'll see the VS Club has a tab all by itself, and just click on there, and anywhere down you can read what I'm offering, and you can read all the information if you want. Or you can click anywhere along the way on the Join Now button. But what I want to tell you is it'll say that I'm going to do 2 to 3, FaceTime live sessions with you guys. But I'm going to do way more than that because I'm in quarantine and it's so easy and I want to do something and I'm motivated to help you guys. So even after the quarantine, I am sure I'll do more than that. But I only wanted to promise the minimum. So please, for $10 a month, we're going to do a lot of FaceTime lives. I'm going to answer all your questions you have. I'm going to teach you homeopathy, recipes, plant-based nutrition. There's so many things that I have to share with you. So go right now and click on the VS Club tab at the top and go sign up so that you're ready for Monday. And by the way, if you're listening to this podcast later, sign up anytime. I don't care if it's 5 months from now or 1 year from when I started. You're welcome to join at any time, and we still will all answer each other's questions and support each other and help each other, and it's going to be so cool. But one last thing, I just want to tell you that when I do my YouTube videos and I'm speaking about homeopathy, I've had 2 videos taken down, and that was really, really disappointing to me because honestly, I didn't say anything like, go take this remedy and you can prevent yourself from getting coronavirus. I never said that. I never would say something like that. You guys know me by now. I'm not somebody to stand over here and preach about doing something that's going to heal somebody. I've been a practitioner for 25 years and I'm careful about the information that I give out to people. And it was really shocking that 2 of my videos got taken down. And then when I asked YouTube, or I think it was in the email they sent me, it said that I was giving out harmful information. And all I was talking about is a remedy by the name of gelsemium. And I guess I mentioned it in the same video as coronavirus, and you're not allowed to do that. So I'm really excited about having you come into my online classroom so I can talk openly, because I need to teach you guys the truths and the lies, and I want to teach you about homeopathy and how to effectively use it in your life right now. And I say effectively because that's what's important. You can't learn homeopathy from going to a practitioner school because they teach you all things that you're not interested right now. You guys just want to learn how to use it in your life. I know that. And I can teach you that really easily, and I can make it fun for you. And it's a tool you'll never regret. So go right now and join me for the first session on Monday, because I need you to do a few things to prepare for that and to teach you how to sign up and get ready for the first session that we're going to do on Monday. So please join right now, okay? I want to see you guys there Monday. Please, you guys, $10 a month. I really want to help you guys. And it's really more for that from the money, because as you can imagine, $10 a month isn't going to make me rich, but I want you to make the commitment as much as I'm making the commitment to learn all this scary technology that I have to do to learn how to do this with you guys. All right, a deal? Okay, deal. I'll see you there Monday. And right now, let me go tell you a little bit about Martha, and then we'll get started on our interview, okay? I love you guys. Martha Rosenberg is a freelance writer and editorial cartoonist. She has been a frequent contributor to the San Francisco Chronicle, the Providence Journal, and the Chicago Tribune. Her work has also appeared in many other publications like the Boston Globe, the LA Times, the Newsday, the Arizona Republic, and many more. In addition, she's a regular health columnist on many websites, including the Huffington Post, Alternet, Counterpunch, and Food Consumer. She is also the editorial cartoonist at the Evanston Roundtable. And Martha has been a guest on my podcast several times before, which are episodes 94, 95, and 110. So check those out, you guys. All right, are you ready? Let's go talk to Martha. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this one, and be ready to learn. Here we go. Hello, Martha, and thank you for coming back on my show. I've been following all your articles on Twitter, and I actually did a YouTube video and said, dang, I got to get Martha back on my show. So I wrote you right away, and I really appreciate your fast response, so welcome back.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah, and I also follow your wonderful content. You know, we're both fighting the same battle here, but thank you very much for inviting me back.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure you're as frustrated as me, because with this coronavirus or the COVID-19 that's going on, it's so disastrous in so many ways. And obviously there's always good and the bad, and I want to talk about both, but it's just disastrous what people have to do. They're all dying alone, and it's so deadly, and there's so many horrible things. But I always feel like there's something that nobody's hearing. And so that's why I said I have to call Martha and get her on my show, because we need to talk about some real issues here that nobody's talking about.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think that with so many people dying, that mainstream media are not looking right now at origins of where this came from. And they will. And that's why we need to talk about some of that. You know, because it's not over by any means, the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think in some ways, you know, you feel a little bit, not embarrassed, but it's a little bit to talk about that. Maybe they feel like you're not compassionate about the issue at hand, but I'm an extremely compassionate person, and I feel so deeply every story I hear about somebody being sick. You know, most people, even though this sickness comes from lifestyle and diet choices, or all our sicknesses come from that, many people are either living in denial or uneducated about that and don't know better. So there's always a need for compassion, no matter what the end result is. And I feel it's such a horrible thing, the way people are having to die. So nothing that I'm going to say today and that you're going to say, because we're both compassionate people, I know, is to undermine anything about the suffering that's going on out there. And I just want everybody out listening to know that, because we deeply feel for those people and their families. But I still want to talk about an issue that nobody's talking about, and that's about, maybe the source of this and the cause of this. So I'd like to first start by just asking you, how do you personally feel about this pandemic? Were you surprised, or did it come, later than you thought or sooner than you thought? I'd like to know your feeling about the whole pandemic.
Well, I love that question, Deborah, because I wrote about it months ago. It was readily apparent to anyone who would read the news that it was going to come here and become a pandemic. So anybody who reads the news could see that a SARS follow-up, if you might call it that, was brewing in Wuhan. And I wrote about it early in January, and I said, this will become a pandemic. It really, you'd have to be ignorant or oblivious to not have read the news headlines that this was happening. And also, when I saw this outbreak, I said to myself, was nothing learned from SARS? When SARS hit, I was in Europe, and I was very afraid to get on the planes, but nothing was learned, including, not that I'm pro-vaccine, but even including a vaccine that they had created against SARS, and they just dropped it because they figured this would never happen again. Well, it did, and it will.
Yeah, and I just want to say something about that, because I think one of the reasons they dropped it is because they discovered it wasn't working, and it wasn't working so well. And then when everything goes away and it all gets shoved under the rug, then they just wait, for the next. But I guess we didn't learn anything, because if you look at our PPE equipment depletion and our lack of respirators and our lack, we must have not learned anything. It just sickens me to death. And I don't even want to just say our healthcare workers, because they are the ones that most people are thinking about, but all of our frontline workers, our grocery store clerks, our truckers trucking the food, our farmers out there working, all of these people that are making life possible right now. So I want to, first say thank you, and we're all filled with gratitude for their work, but what a disaster that we don't have the PPE or the personal protection equipment for these frontline healthcare workers having to deal with such a deadly virus. So to me, it shows we didn't learn anything.
You're absolutely, right on that. And, the actual source of COVID-19, as far as anything I've read, is the same as SARS and MERS, which is to say it was a bad virus that was hosted by an animal that was eaten. So they didn't necessarily have to eat the bats to get the COVID, or the MERS, which of course was hosted by camels and dromedaries, or the SARS, which was hosted by civet cats and raccoon dogs. But it is an animal-based virus. And it's amazing to me how there was no shutting of the wet markets. I'm sure you've read about them and talked about them.
Yeah.
That really cause all these diseases, the wet markets.
Yeah, it's horrible. And the cruelty, oh my God, I did my best to try to watch a piece of the video that I was watching. I think it was from Australia, 60 Minutes. They did a special, and I was watching it on YouTube about the wet markets. And, the whole thing wasn't the wet market cruelty, but it was someone in undercover disguise. And so they would show the parts of the pangolins in the cage and the abuse of them kicking them, and I can't see 5 seconds of that kind of video. Now, I feel like everybody should need to watch that kind of stuff, just like those movies that show the horrible abuse to animals, but when you're already a vegan and you're not participating in that, and you love animals and you can't stand the sight of cruelty of animals, then I feel like I should get a free pass to have to see that, because it just breaks my heart so much and I can't handle it. But I think that if you watch that and you still choose to eat meat, then I would be surprised, because I think every human being is born to love an animal of any kind, to at least appreciate it. So that's so true, those wet markets. And, from what I understand, many of them are still existing. It's so sad.
Well, you're right. And I've gotten mails from readers who say, well, these wet markets are because there aren't refrigerators and they have to have the fresh meat. And then I've had readers write me and say, well, they're poor and they're hungry. No, the wild animal trade is all about money and prestige. It's not at all about survival or food. The wild animal trafficking is a huge profit industry.
Yeah.
And also, from everything I've read, eating a tiger or a koala bear or a wolf pup is not necessity, it's prestige. It's like we might have in a different era called caviar.
Yeah.
So it's inexcusable.
Right. And I mean, I just would say personally myself, I feel that that's just a little bit of an elevated version. And maybe this is a statement that many people out there that aren't vegan would disagree with, but I just feel like it's only slightly more elevated because it's a wild animal. I don't think any animal is better or greater or more dangerous or whatever than any other animal. It's just because it's a wild animal and now there's so much unknown, but all animals carry viruses that humans don't have. And the problem to me is that, it's become normal to eat a cow. And when you just told me that person wrote into you and said, well, it's poor people or whatever. But believe me, if you had to pay for the price of that, what it would really cost to eat one hamburger patty, that price of that hamburger should be $80 because you're paying for that cow to live, you're paying for trucks to handle all its feed and to house it and all the things that it has to do. It's only because it's a subsidized thing that they can go out and buy cheap meat. It's not really food for poor people if you're wanting to look at that.
Well, you're absolutely right. And now, more than ever, but in general, all the big egg prices are supported by the government anyway to keep it cheap, but we aren't paying the full cost. And I agree with you that all animals are sacred to me. I don't care if it's a chicken or a wolf, but the wet market raises different issues in terms of hygiene and creating a new virus.
Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about that, because I'm sure people on your podcast have heard rumors of this, but some of these animals are actually eaten alive. And, these sorts of practices, you could look at them spiritually, like the universe is saying, don't do this. But hygienically, that's what's created this zoonotic pathogen. And, Wayne Pacelli, who was with HSUS until a few years ago, he had some interviews with dog eaters, and dog eating is not just China, who said that the more they beat the animal, the better it tasted. So these are cruel, cruel, cruel cultures. The factory farming in the U.S. is cruel, but it's not intentionally cruel, like in the sense of the animal will taste better if we harm it.
Yeah.
So it really is an ethical issue, these wet markets, the dog eating, the koala eating, and a lot of these cultures also are the ones that eat the rhino horn and markets for the ivory tusk. So there's, again, a no caring for the animals.
Right. And, sadly, this idea that these, like the pangolin, the scales of the pangolin are used for some kind of aphrodisiac or some kind of medicinal thing. It's so sad because it kills so many of our wild animals like the rhinos and the horn and all these animals that are taken because they're falsely believed to create some kind of aphrodisiac effect or some kind of medicinal healing. And so many animals' lives are lost to this torturous and false idea. It's just really heartbreaking.
One hope I really have when this whole nightmare is over is that there will be world focus on these false medicine cures that decimate wildlife and the wet markets and the dog eating. I'm hoping that when we all recover, those of us that are lucky enough to not get it, we will really look. And I did see that 60 Minutes show you're talking about from Australia, and that's a good start to highlight that.
It is. It is. This is what I'm saying. I mean, in general, I would say anyone that is eating an animal, most people do it without a certain awareness, even though I'd say every year we move along and, more and more plant-based diets are becoming popular. But still, I think those kind of things need to be seen by anybody who is still eating meat, because I want their choices to eat meat to be in the awareness of what's happening to the animal that they're eating. And so I think that was fantastic, especially for like a main network like Australia 60 Minutes. That was huge to expose that. So I agree with that. And Martha, do you feel like this stay-at-home order, or that we have, I don't want to say forced into, because we needed to do this, but the virus forced us into having to all retract back into our homes. Do you think this is a way of nature finding balance and trying to heal?
Well, that's interesting. I haven't really written much about that, but I have heard, obviously the air pollution is down, the water pollution is down. I think that what we'll see is that a lot of what we've been doing is unnecessary in terms of the activity that causes environmental damage. So I like what you're saying. I hadn't really thought of it quite like that.
Well, the reason I tell you that is I'll tell you why I think like that, and that's only because I'm a homeopath, and our body is a sacred temple, and our body finds balance. So let's say someone gets a psoriasis on the skin, and if they go to the doctor and they put a cortisone cream on it, and it gets pushed in, the body's going to do one of two things. It's either going to push it back out because it doesn't want it inside where the internal organs are, which are much more important than the external skin. That's why it pushed it out to begin with, because it's trying to always maintain a homeostasis. And so when it gets pushed in, if you're lucky enough and your body pushes it back out, then you've protected your inner organs again. And if you keep doing that and one day it doesn't come back out, then that's what we call the danger of suppression, and something internally is going to go more wrong. And you see it in kids all the time with psoriasis or eczema when they get a lot of cortisone, or not even a lot. It can happen in the first application, and then they get asthma because when they push it in and the body doesn't have the force to push it back out, then the lungs are now affected. And when you treat them homeopathically and you treat the asthma with a homeopathic remedy, the first thing it will do to heal is push the eczema back out on the skin, and then it goes away from the skin. So we know this because homeopathy is very old. So if you think about that homeostasis, why wouldn't nature be like that? We can only do so much destruction before it's going to find its own balance, right? So it's like we've been destroying the oceans, destroying. It's kind of like what I want to say is over-destruction, over-population, over-consumption, over everything, right? And now nature says, hang on now, wait a minute. That's just like, we can't function like this anymore. And so it creates some horrible virus. And now everyone has to go sit at home while the oceans don't get fished out, why the air pollution goes down, why the cars aren't driving on the road. It's kind of interesting.
I love that, Deborah. I hadn't thought of it quite like that, but I know that the cruise ships are just a blight on the oceans. They're sewage and they're plastic, so it's really good to get them out of the way too.
Yeah, it's a nice, and I was listening to this one guy I really like, and he said, after this experience of us all being home for 3 weeks, we should do this every year. Every human should go into their house for 3 weeks every year and give nature a break and learn to go with inside ourselves. And, there's a lot of positive things that have come out of this quarantine, actually. Look how many people are reaching out. I think the levels of compassion for other human beings are going up. It's a lot of things we didn't have before, and this is what I mean about nature finding balance.
Well, I like that a lot. And getting back to the meat industry for a second, it is poster child for imbalance, because I always say to people, even if you don't care about animals, it also harms the workers, the environment, the human consumers, and the economy. Okay, the meat industry is the biggest blight in the world. And so, having that, we're going to talk in a minute about the slaughterhouses shutting down, but they're, you hear about the chicken plants like Tyson in Arkansas just spewing their effluvium into the river, whereupon all the fish die. I mean, that's an example of non-balance in an extreme form.
Yeah, well, I think it's also what begins to happen, too, when you have a government subsidizing all this industry and making the cheapest food on earth be something that should be the absolutely most expensive, inefficient food on the planet, and then they make it so cheap, and then they're forced to try to save it, like in these meat packing plants and these animal factory farms. I want to move into that area because I know that's your specialty, and I read yesterday, and it was on the news about the pork plant that's closed down now. So can you first update everyone on what's happening with all the animal farming plants and the chickens and the cows and the porks, and where are we standing with that?
Sure. I just wrote about that yesterday. It's an unfolding story. But Smithfield Foods, which is the largest pork producer in the U.S., closed its Sioux Falls, South Dakota slaughterhouse probably yesterday or the day before, after 300 workers came down with COVID. So that's one. And then at the JBS USA is probably the largest cattle slaughterer, and they closed their Souderton, Pennsylvania slaughterhouse. Tyson, who of course is the chicken giant, closed its Columbus Junction, Iowa pork slaughterhouse, and a kosher slaughterhouse called Empire in Pennsylvania closed, and Sanderson Farms, I don't know if they're closed yet, but I see them going in that direction because they asked their Georgia workers at a Georgia slaughterhouse to not come to work. So what you have there in the slaughterhouses, of course you have workers close to each other. You have a lot of poor people who are not here legally who aren't going to complain because they don't want to be deported. So you have the whole issue of immigrants, which takes away rights. So, somebody has to work. But mostly you have the slaughter interface between the humans and the animals, which is what happened at the wet markets. Certainly, that's where COVID came from, was slaughtering animals. But what has not been reported much yet that I see happening, and I could be paranoid, but I do my homework, there's another coronavirus in China. It preceded this one, and it's called, I'm looking it up here on my paper, it's called SADS, Severe Acute Diarrhea Syndrome. It's a coronavirus that afflicts pork. They call it SADS.
Wow.
Well, you have to ask yourself, is it already here? It killed, in 2018, it killed 24,000 piglets on 4 Chinese farms in just a few days. And that was 2 years ago. So it's a blight in China. And you have to want, if there's a coronavirus that's in pork, and of course there's a lot of back and forth trade between China, pandemics spread, whether they're animal or human, you have to wonder, are these slaughterhouses not just hosting humans who are sick, but animals who are sick?
But Martha, let me ask you something, and then you can continue. But is this SADS? Is this something that only the animals are infected with in China, or are the Chinese people that are interacting with these animals getting sick from it also?
Well, at the point that it's been reported, it's only animals. But you and I both know that these coronaviruses leap, to humans. But at this point, it's only pork.
Okay. Wow, that's scary. That is really scary.
Well, it is. And see, what Big Pork, who I really detest, I just detest them, what they try to do is hide epidemics because they don't want people to cease to eat their products. So a few years ago, I think it was 1/10 of all pigs died in the U.S. from pandemic epidemic diarrhea. They call it PED. And they kept this from the public, but there are photos, and they admit that at least 1/10 of all U.S. pigs died of that. Big pork is not going to tell people we now have SADS. And there's another disease that comes from China that's a pork disease called African swine fever. They call it ASF. And I wrote about that last year, but ASF has killed half of all pigs in China and 1/4 of all pigs in the U.S. And again, Deborah, these stories do not make the news. Why not?
Right.
I mean, these are huge stories, not just for vegans like ourselves, but just for public health purposes.
Right. And it's all about the money. We know that. We both know that. It's just so sad that they're really willing to risk human lives for the buck, It's just breaks my heart. Yeah,
and for the money and all, not just risking the workers' health and, of course, the animals suffer, but also human health.
Yeah.
Because this goes into the water systems, it goes into packaging. So anyway, the pork industry, which I call big pork, is right now very afraid of African swine fever and severe acute diarrhea syndrome, or SADS. These two epidemics in China are destined to the U.S., and most pork outlets are greatly afraid of these. They're testing for them already. And this is sort of the backstory on the slaughterhouses. Now, we know about avian flu and chickens, that we know, but this pork thing is very much underreported by media.
Well, from all your research, and you were writing about this already in 2018, so you must have predicted a pandemic was coming, kind of like you were just probably waiting for it because you're learning about all these deadly viruses and they're covering it all up and not telling people so that they keep eating their pork and their chicken and their beef. And yet there's more and more deadly viruses that are emerging. Well, we know that as a health professional. I've known in my lifetime I was going to face a pandemic because I see all the suppression of medicine, what medicine does. And when you start giving antibiotics for viral ear infection or fungal ear infections or viral pneumonias, and you're just throwing antibiotics, now we have superbugs that none of the antibiotics work for. It's only a matter of time. And if you add that to the viruses in animals and all the animals we're eating and producing with the amount of viruses that are growing, and oh my gosh, we certainly aren't surprised we have a pandemic in our lifetime, are we?
Well, you're absolutely right. And the antibiotic overuse it's also really underreported because that's also created, as you said, the superbugs, the killer bugs. But, I think it's worth mentioning that a lot of our biggest diseases now are animal-based. And HIV is mostly considered to have come from eating primates in the bush years and years ago. Ebola, of course, was from eating wildlife. Bird flu, Dr. Michael Greger at the HSUS says there was no avian flu until there was factory farming of birds. So there you go. Then you have the mad cow, which was called BSE, which causes chronic wasting in deer, and CJD in humans. Okay, so there's another virus that was created, they say, from making cows eat cows. So all of these viruses, whether it's overuse of antibiotics or these perverse factory farming practices, come from man-made activities.
And it's really amazing because, of course, it's your specialty and you know all this stuff and you write about it to get the word out but it's amazing how covered up it is and how calmly and safely people eat their meat without having any clue of what they're really eating and what the dangers of even producing that meat on their plate is causing to actually human life. It's really scary how suppressed it is.
Well, and also the drugs that are used to produce meat, I always say this, but if they were on the label, nobody would eat the meat. I mean, that vaccines and heavy metals and, of course, antibiotics and hormones that are used every day by U.S. meat producers, nobody would eat them because they wouldn't want them in their body, but they're putting it in their body.
Yeah, they just don't realize that they're taking antibiotics every day, every time they eat their meat, and all those drugs and heavy metals and all the crap from the GMO, from the grains they're feeding. They're just, meat is kind of the last ingredient in the ingredients of meat, isn't it?
Yeah, that's well put. And every so often, the Office of Inspector General will report on what actually is being sold, and they'll recall or expose, let's say meat producers who constantly drop off animals at the rendering plant or the slaughterhouse that nobody should eat, and they'll expose it. But the press, I think, really, Deborah, I've been vegan really almost my whole life, and I get angry sometimes at this because it's like people will latch onto causes, over people that are suffering or different issues that don't immediately ask for a sacrifice. But when it comes to the quote-unquote sacrifice of not eating that dead animal on your plate, people won't do it, because you actually have to do something.
Yeah, it's really, but I don't know, maybe this will be enough of a scare, and if it's not this one, it'll be the next animal virus, and if it's not that one, it'll be the next one, until people get it, and maybe there won't be another opportunity, because these kind of things could be the very thing that just takes everybody out, and it's just unbelievable that it's so preventable. Really, it's just so wrong what we've done. Just the whole idea about eating animals is just so wrong. I still can't get over it. I sometimes feel like I'm born into the wrong time period, because it just feels so wrong the way we're living and the way we're told, to eat. It's absolutely a joke, actually. So, but Martha, tell me what's going to happen now that these animal slaughterhouses are closed. Can you tell me what's going on? I mean, first I want to know, what are the poor animals doing that are living in those horrible conditions? Are they just still crammed in all their small cages, and are they being fed, and what's going to happen?
Well, that's a very good question, and I really haven't seen anything about that yet. The cynic in me says that they'll bring in, quote unquote scab workers or other people who are so desperate they'll have to work, and they'll slaughter them anyway. That's kind of what I think will happen. Sometimes when meat pathogens have broken out in a slaughterhouse, they'll still kill the animals somehow, and they'll send them to a poor third world country that can't say no, or that doesn't know health. So, it's to them it's money. There was years ago, and there's these diseases, Deborah. They're so scary. There was a disease called PIN, and it was like something pork inflammatory, whatever. And this was from workers who were chopping up the heads of pigs and breathing in that mist from, which is probably blood and phlegm and who knows what. And they were becoming really, really sick. This was maybe 6 years ago. And they were so sick, these workers, that they were in wheelchairs and couldn't get out of them.
Oh, my God.
And again, it was barely, because the thing is, the press doesn't really want to report on it, first because their advertisers are food, okay? But secondly, because people will start saying what's going on in these slaughterhouses. So anyway, these victims of PIN, some did not recover, but the products themselves that made them so sick, and they didn't really find the total causes of this new disease, they were all sent to Latin and South America, because nobody cares. They're just, so in getting back to your question, they'll just take this meat and ship it elsewhere if they can slaughter it. I don't think they'll let the animals just die and rot, because that's their money,
Right, exactly. I mean, they're commodities, so it's not about the animal, it's about their dollars, as always. But what's interesting is they ship this meat to these these countries like that, and then these people probably eat it, and they probably get these undiagnosable symptoms like losing the ability to walk and all these neurological disorders, and they're probably diagnosed with MS and all this stuff, when really it's the meat that they ate from our country, so we could have to, save the dollar and still sell that bad meat to somebody. Oh my God, that's just so horrible. When I hear stories like that, Martha, I'm just embarrassed to be a human sometimes. It's like, it's so sad. And there's times you want to say to be an American, but I know it happens everywhere, so I wouldn't say that but obviously the dollar, the almighty dollar, but it's so unethical. It is so unethical. There's just no words to describe it. That's just horrible. Okay, it's time to take a little break and a drink, and hopefully you're not going in the bathroom and vomiting from all of these nightmare stories that we're telling you about the dangers of eating meat and all the viruses that they contain. But it's about exposing the truth, you guys, and Martha's so good about that, and I really always want you guys to make a decision based on the truth and not things that are hidden, which many things are either lied or hidden from us. So I hope you're enjoying the show so far, and we're going to get right back to that interview. But before we do that, I just want to remind you one last time to use today after this podcast to go sign up for the VS Club ASAP. All right, you guys, I love you, and I look so forward to sharing all kinds of great information with you in the VS Club, which is my online classroom, and that feels safer already. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Let's go finish that interview.
And I think the lesson that nobody's learning is that we create these diseases. We being those that squeeze every penny out of animal eating and animal production. But this is not a new lesson.
Right. Yeah.
Ebola, and then the avian flu. What everybody expected, maybe for the last 10 years, was a huge outbreak of H5N1, which was the original avian flu. That was, I think, the Spanish flu in 1918. And they were very prepared for it. And then in 2009, it was the H1N1, which just wasn't the big killer. And so the world was kind of ready for an avian flu outbreak, and nobody was seeing this happening, which was so apparent. And, I take no particular credit because I have no sources in China, but, Reuters and the Associated Press, they were covering this SARS follow-up. It was there. The politicians could have seen it.
Yeah. And it's just like we're just not learning because we're not telling the people the truth of what's out there and the dangers of eating the meat when we're thinking about viral loads that these animals or these viruses that they carry that are so dangerous, and how they can jump to other animals and then to humans. And it's just it all always boils down to cover up and lies. And this is why I do the work that I do, and you too, because at least you want people to have the truth before they make a decision.
Yeah, and let them know the truth. And of course, it is wrapped up in money. Exposing these cruel practices is hard to do because mainstream media are very supported by ads, from big pharma and from big food or big meat. So they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them.
Yeah.
But people should know what's happening. One thing I found in my research recently was some of the Chinese researchers who were looking at the COVID, before it was really COVID, but they were looking at like between SARS and COVID, were funded by the U.S. government. And so there's that too. It's like, well, did we create a monster here?
Right.
I mean, there's some interplay between our own government and these other international researchers. They all work together,
Yeah, and it's like if you want to find the information like you did when you were reading, and me too, I've been following this since, I don't know, around January 11th, And I knew what was coming, and our own government is saying they kind of didn't see what was coming and trying to, blame China or whatever. But the bottom line is, if you just look, you had to see, and we don't have intelligence or all these other tools to find more truths out. But even without all of that stuff, I would have predicted something like this soon anyway, just like you said, once you're aware of all the dangers and the horrible things that the viruses that animals carry and the markets that they're abused in to sell and how they're eaten, you have to figure it's luck that we didn't have one before today. So now we have this. But Martha, what's going to happen now to the production of meat for people? All these people that don't know all this information, and let's just find a way for 350 million people to please listen to this interview. Oh my God. But let's just say, for these people that are meat eaters, and what's going to happen at the supermarkets? Are their shelves going to be empty soon?
I think there's a storehouse of a lot of meat. I don't see the supply drying up from this. The freshly slaughtered meat, probably a lot of it is processed. I'm no great expert on the merchandising aspects of the meat industry, but I would guess a lot of it is processed and, made into Slim Jims and things like that. So it doesn't all immediately go to the stores.
Yeah.
I don't see the whole meat supply drying up. I think if people were at all smart, they shouldn't eat meat anyway, but especially now, it really is my humble opinion that the meat could contain this SARS virus. I mean, that's really what I think, because I believe the contagion is bidirectional. I think the workers give it to the animals, and I think the animals give it to the workers, and I think that's what we saw in the wet markets.
Right, and even the zoo with the tiger.
Yes, exactly. It's bidirectional. I don't think people's meat will dry up anytime soon, but if people were all smart, one thing I learned about the COVID that I found so interesting is the biggest comorbidity is not diabetes or asthma or obesity, it's hypertension. Okay, and you and I know that hypertension comes from meat eating and too much salt and also obesity. But, if people were at all intelligent, they'd use this opportunity to discover plant-based proteins.
Yeah, for sure. And I have so much I can say on that. The first thing I want to say is, first of all, high blood pressure is very related to kidney function. And when you eat meat that's protein, and protein is destroys the kidneys, and there's kidney disease is probably the fastest growing disease in our country because of our high protein meat diets. So in addition to obesity and cholesterol clogging, arterial disease, you now have hypertension and kidney failure, or going into kidney failure. And it's just amazing to me. First of all, on that note, I was so frustrated when I would hear the news. I try not to watch the news all day, for sure. I like to just, on my iPad, I read the news, because that way I can read what I want, not spend all day. But then maybe at the night I listen. And when I listen to it, I would be like screaming at the TV, which I never do. And I'd be saying, but why aren't they keep talking about, especially early on, they kept saying, but this is only for sick people. It's all people that have pre-existing conditions. So don't worry. It's elderly people with pre-existing conditions. Everybody that's dying is already sick on another level. And I'm thinking, what? But 90% of Americans, and let's say probably in the world, the percentage is really high, but for sure, speaking of American, but then I look at Germany, who's right behind Americans, and England. I mean, most of these people are obese, have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and arterial disease. And they're saying it's only for people with pre-existing conditions. And I would be screaming out, but who doesn't have that? Our whole culture is at risk, right? Because our whole culture has all of those.
Deborah, I don't like to be snide, but the younger generations, which I'm not part of anymore, but let's say Generation Z, which would be in high school and college now, they are so fat. And so you're right, it's not just the old and sick people, it's the whole country.
Yeah. It's the whole country. So I wanted to say, okay, so what we've learned, this is what I would say. So what we've learned that the people at risk are people with pre-existing conditions, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, arterial disease, kidney disease. Okay, these are people at risk. If we add all of and we have to add cancer in there if you've had cancer before and any kind of lung disease. But if we add all of those together, what percentage of Americans then are at risk? Everybody, pretty much, And I've always wondered, I wish maybe one day, Martha, there'll be a stat that will say, these are the percentage of vegans that got COVID-19. I'm not saying that a vegan can't get it, because of course I believe anybody can get this. It's a highly, highly contagious virus, but I would have to think that a vegan's body would respond differently, because a lot of these things we're learning about the body failing in this disease, to me, is because of this blood, circulation and the thickening and all the like you said, the hypertension, all the complications from these diseases, of course, are not allowing this body to function as it was built to function, whereas a vegan's body has better functioning organs and cleaner organs. So it'd be interesting to see if there was any kind of statistic that vegans recovered faster or got less infected. It would be so cool to ever find that out.
I would love to hear that. And a thing that is related to that, Deborah, is that the microbiomes, the gut bacteria of meat eaters is very compromised from all the antibiotics in the meat.
Yes.
And specifically, the UTIs that so many women get, I've never had one because I don't eat chicken, but they're very correlated with chicken antibiotics. So there's also, the antibiotics people are getting from their meat products that they aren't even aware of.
Right. And the eating of the meat and that production of the gut bacteria, we know now that it produces that dangerous, what is it called? Is it TMAO or OA? TMAO, do you know that? Anyways, it's a very dangerous product that is highly related to the heart damage. And so there's so many things, and this is, and when these meat eaters ate vegan only for, I think it was 1 week or 1 month, they lost that ability to make that. So it's really a dangerous byproduct that is made. And so there's so many things that I can see why a meat eater who has even high blood pressure, but even in general, I would say one who, if they didn't know they had or didn't have type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure, high cholesterol, just being a meat eater in general is hard on your kidneys. Your body doesn't want that much protein. It's hard on your arterial system. They're showing that kids that are age 13 already have starting arterial sclerosis. So imagine if you're diagnosed with COVID-19 and you're 52, even if you haven't been told you have it, we know that we all have a kind of deterioration like that, and eating meat is taking that down faster. So there's nothing really protective in eating a protein diet. And I think, hopefully one day we learn. But I'm sad to say that I don't believe that kind of news will come out, because, as you said, it's about protecting the commodity of the animal industry, and that's why we do what we do, because we're trying to tell everybody out there the truth, and I hope this can shed some light for some people. But Martha, also what's frustrating to me is how fast they want to find a vaccine, and this is what frustrates me as a health practitioner. Why don't we talk about getting our population of the world healthier? Why don't we talk about how to make our human body function as it was meant to be? Why don't we talk about how to get our blood into a better flow and healthier, and our immune system stronger by our diet and lifestyle? But instead, we're just looking for the new drug, the new vaccine. And I know,
keep eating, right?
And I know I'm not the best person to talk about this, because my mom died from a flu vaccine, and I know vaccines are a very personal issue, but frankly, I'm afraid that this coronavirus is going to force us all into a mandatory vaccine, and that thought scares me to death. So whatever people believe in vaccine, I never tell people do it, don't do it. That's a subject that I stay away from in some ways, but I feel the need to have the freedom myself to choose or not choose. And this scares me now because they're banking so much on a vaccine.
Well, you're right, Deborah, and obviously a vaccine or even a treatment enables us to keep eating, not me when I say us, but we, the world, to keep eating these poor diets. And one thing that a lot of people are not aware of is to what extent we have exported this awful Western junk food diet to the world.
Yeah.
So you look at the poor places in the world, and they're just as fat and unfit as we are. We've exported that.
I know. When I played golf in Japan, I remember my first year going over there. I was so amazed as how different, you look at a culture that's totally different. I was a foot taller than everybody, and their diet was completely different than me, and everything in the whole culture was so different. It was so interesting for me. I loved it so much. And then towards the end of my career, when I went over there, maybe 15 years later, I started seeing, kids with acne and overweight and Kentucky Fried Chickens and Shakey's Pizzas and McDonald's and Baskin Robbins ice cream. And those were where all the long lines were. And it's just sad to think this is the part of America that everybody takes on. And wow, what a horrible example we're leading.
Right, and Coca-Cola, who will sit on these World Health Organization panels, the soft drink makers have launched a whisper campaign that's been picked up by the CDC because of their investments, that overweight is not caused by Coke and that type of thing, but by lack of exercise. That's just a lie. But we've exported these diets, and there's laboratories all across the country that work on making these foods irresistible. It's no coincidence if somebody's hooked on, Fritos or something. It's not a coincidence. These foods are engineered to be addictive, and I don't even blame the victims who've fallen for these diets. They don't correlate their poor health with their eating, of course. And I'd like to ask you something, Deborah. When you get in your practice somebody who's been a victim of this kind of bad diet, like you said, the kidney effects and the meat and the hypertension, how do you begin treating them and counseling them?
Well, it's changed over the years because people are so sick right now that it's really like if you're 50 years old, let's just say, and that's young, but that's still 50 years of eating wrongly for most people. And when I first started homeopathy 25 years ago, I would say I began by taking their case and really trying to find kind of the one remedy that covered their whole story, including their mental, emotional. And not only in my own practice, but hearing from other homeopaths and watching other homeopaths over the last 25 years, I started seeing how unsuccessful that kind of treatment, I'm going to call that kind of constitutional classical treatment where you give one remedy and it kind of puts the body back in balance and the body fixes itself. And I personally started seeing wow, this isn't working, but I know I have the right remedy for the person. And why is that? What's blocking it? And then I started having my doubts about maybe it was all the vaccinations we're doing or all the drugs they're taking. So then I started slowly trying to find a way to still help these people. So then I started working in more, and this is how I specialize because I myself was poisoned from the pesticides on the golf course. So immediately, remember that? So immediately I started thinking more in the lines of, okay, I need to strengthen their organs and get these toxins out, and all this protein that they're eating is damaging their kidneys. I need to help their kidneys, and I need to help their livers that are trying to produce all these hormones but can't because they're so busy with all these heavy metals and poisons, and I need to help their lungs. And so I started kind of focusing more on an organotherapy approach where I would do and they used to do this in homeopathy hundreds of years ago. It was called drainage therapy, where before you eat, and it's kind of like before you give the classical constitutional remedy, you can't strengthen the constitution until you clean out the house. So they always, in the old days, would say, if I bought an old house and I wanted to redo it, I have to sweep the floors, take out the furniture, paint the walls, do everything, and then I can build the structure, right? So it's kind of like that. I want to help these people back to health, but I can't even give them a remedy. I have to first work on their sickness on a more organ level. So I try with diet. That's really hard because many people come to me, they want homeopathy, but they're not willing to change their diet. So I do my best to educate them as we go along, and I try to incorporate more and more vegan meals into their lifestyle and try to maybe do some cleanses for 7 days or 5 days, and then they start seeing how they can feel. And then I work a lot on organ therapy or detox, and then slowly helping them with deeper remedies to build the constitution and immune response.
And have you seen some rewarding results in your patients?
Yeah, but I can tell you that the sicker and more toxic you are, it's a long journey. And I don't know, I think just our culture, and I want to just say maybe Americans and Germans and French and all these like really, leading, I don't know, we have this in our mindset. We're so fast these days and everything needs to be like such a quick response, and we desire so much so fast. So it's like many, many big countries are like this. And I think that makes it difficult because even though someone comes to you and they think they're going to be patient about getting well, it's amazing to see how fast they give up because they want the quick fix. It's the drug that can take away their skin problem, and it's the drug that can get rid of their chronic infections. But I keep trying to explain it's about education, but that's suppression. That's suppression. Dangerous suppression. You die from suppression. Most people are never realizing they're dying from some form of suppression that they did earlier. And I just educate, and some people are going to be willing to walk the walk and others not. But the good thing about it that I see is every little step they take, they feel better. So that's the good news. Is it might take a long time, but if you're feeling better on the journey, you don't mind walking it.
And one thing that you made me think of, Deborah, the best-selling drug in the world, or in the U.S. anyway, in recent years has been Humira, along with Remicade and Enbrel. And these immune-suppressing drugs are marketed very aggressively for things that, in my opinion, do not require you to suppress your immune system, okay? Mm-hmm. For example, plaque psoriasis or IBS or something like this. But they're very aggressively marketed. And it seems to me that if millions of Americans are on these immune-suppressing drugs, wouldn't that make them candidates for COVID?
Oh, my God, for sure, because now you have no immune system. My good friend in high school, he had psoriatic arthritis, and he died from those drugs because you get one exposure to a flu or a pneumonia or any kind of viral, and they're gone. Yeah. So, but these are the kind of people that they led us to believe that we're all dying from COVID and stuff. But it's not that. It's simple hypertension. It's simple type 2 diabetes. It's simple arterial sclerosis. It's like it's all of these conditions that. But imagine somebody that is on an immunosuppressant. That's sad. And the question I always would have to say to my clients is, but what is this drug doing for the cause of your problem? Okay, so it's taken away the symptoms, but what did it do to the cause of why you got it? And people don't think that far because they just want their symptoms gone. But where did your psoriasis go? Where did it go? And what does this drug do to the reason why you got it? And then if you haven't fixed the why, like let's just say something easy like a cancerous tumor. Okay, you cut it off, it's gone. But how is that going to help the reason why you grew the tumor?
Right.
And if you don't affect the cause, if you don't treat the cause of why you're growing tumors, why is surgery to cut them off going to keep being the answer? Because one day your body's going to say, you're not letting me push anything out. I need to push out. Fine. Now I get sick in my brain or I get sick in my lungs, and soon, you see they die from something else, but it's all suppression.
Because it's not going to the source of it. But even the FDA warns people if you take these biologics like the Humira, you're inviting superinfections, fungus infections, and not just cancers, but rare cancers. rare childhood cancers, lymphoma, and they admit that in their warnings. Now, why do people still take these drugs? And your immune system is your friend.
Yeah, I mean, your immune system is the only battlefield you have to fight anything, and you want to turn that off. It's only out of your lack of impatience to find the cause, to learn how to fix the cause, and that's not a fast process. It is not a fast process because it's taken you your lifetime to get sick, but it happens, and for some people it can happen fairly quickly, surprisingly, but for other people it's years. But you still have to address the cause or you have no chance, and eventually you're going to die from the suppression of that. And like you said, now you put yourself at high risk for any kind of infection, and in today's world they're all over us, so that's ridiculous that you would take that. Now, I understand there's a lot of people that, are feeling like that's their lifesaver, but that's why I try to educate people. But there is a way to treat the cause of that problem and to build your immune system into a balanced way so your body can work as it was intended to work. But telling people about lifestyle and diet is one of the hardest things because, they don't want to give up anything that they love.
Well, that's right. And as far as the pharmaceuticals are concerned, I have many friends and colleagues who've been duped into taking antidepressants, not just now, but for years, 10 and 20 years they've been on these Prozacs. And we now know, which they didn't really know when they first marketed them, because they were so eager to make money, that these drugs leach out calcium. And now my friends and my colleagues are all getting broken ankles, broken wrists, ruined hips and shoulders, and their teeth are falling out because of the SSRI effect on calcium. Well, you didn't need an antidepressant anyway. You probably need a good diet and maybe to address whatever was making you sad. Yeah,
and it's what's making you sad sometimes is the toxins in your body. That's I sometimes say our human race, our functioning, it's like the toxins have the control over their personality. It's not them anymore, because when you have that many heavy metals in your body, you think differently, you act differently. It's so unfortunate to me, though. Not everybody wants to do it. Not everybody cares on that level. They just want to feel good for today. They just want to have not that pain for today. But they're ignoring the future on purpose. They're blocking it out. And there's truly many people in the world that don't even have any idea what they're doing. They just do it because they still believe in their doctor so much. So I'm not knocking people because everybody's on different levels, but I'm here to tell people there's always another way. And if you choose to want to go down that path to heal yourself, then I'm here to walk the walk with you. And that's why I like doing what I do, because I just want people who are willing, instead of trying to fight the fight and argue the points. I don't need to have an argument with why meat is bad anymore. I'm so far beyond that. If you want to eat meat and you have a different philosophy on diet and what it does for you, then no problem. Just live your life. But I want to help the people who are open to trying a different way and living a more compassionate life in addition to feeling well.
Well, yeah, I so agree with you on the drugs and the health and the animals. I mean, we're on the same page, and I so admire the work you're doing.
Thank you, and I so admire your work, because if we don't have people like us that are getting the truths out there are so many lies out there being covered up, and I really appreciate your time today, Martha, because I always feel like, I got to get that out, and Martha's the one. And I was just doing my YouTube video the other night, and I even put on there, was saying to my listeners, I have to get Martha back, because we need to talk about this issue. So I'm glad I did, and I'm glad you could join me so fast. And I really want to thank you for your work, and I so love chatting with you all the time. So you stay healthy and, eat well as you always do. And let's trust in our diet and our immune system, but just protect yourself and wear that mask and gloves and stay home if you can, like everybody else, right?
Yes, Deborah. And let's check back when this nightmare is over with.
Let's do that, because then we can talk about the next virus. All right, Martha, thank you so much. I enjoyed chatting with you today.
Okay, then. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I just love talking with Martha. She's a cool person and she just really gets it. And I know how hard she's working in her life to really expose all of these lies to people. And honestly, I really believe once people learn this stuff and really understand that this is truly what's happening in our food system, I really think that people would make different choices. And just look at all the implications that having meat in your diet causes. I mean, the fact that it causes arterial sclerosis and high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and there's so much more, obesity, and it goes on and on and on. There's really no good benefits from this. And if you put into consideration now all the dangers of these viruses and bacteria and all the antibiotics that are fed to the animals, which are going into your system, and that means you're getting a dose of antibiotics every day, and now that's causing the ability to have these superbugs because they're not able to be killed by the antibiotics anymore because they're antibiotic resistant, as they call. There's really no more good information about why we need to eat meat. There's nothing good about it, honestly. So I just want to push you guys in the direction as much as I can to understand that eating plants, which is delicious fruits and vegetables, and just eating them in their whole form as much as possible, and eat the plant-based, whole food, healthy diet that millions and millions of research has shown to be the only diet that we were meant to eat and the healthiest diet to avoid disease. I just hope that I can keep nudging you in that direction. And today's episode is kind of gross when you think about all these things. And I meant it when I said, geez, it's now becoming where meat is the last ingredient in the product of meat because there's so many other things in there like heavy metals and viruses and bacterias and drugs, and there's so much crap like this pink slime that they do, and it's horrible. So I know it's gross. I don't want to do that to you guys, but I just want you to be healthy, and I want your body to be able to overcome diseases, and I want your body to have a strong immune system. And really the only way to do this is to eat a plant-based diet. And I wanted today more than anything to speak about the very thing that nobody's talking about. And I know it's a little early to talk about this yet because we have so many people suffering with the disease, and we want to be, polite and respectful and honor their suffering and be compassionate about that, but nobody's talking about the cause yet, and the cause is about eating animals. And so I hope Martha shed some light for you guys today, and I hope that you learned something from this today, and you can take this and maybe pass it on to other people so that they can learn the truths and the lies, and they can maybe make some healthier decisions in their life. All right, you guys, I'm going to end right here because it's a good place to end. It's been a fantastic day, and I'm so grateful that Martha was able to take this time and speak with me today, and I could share it with you guys today on Vidal Speaks Wednesday. So I hope you enjoyed the show today, my podcast family. But I know that you know what time it is right now. Yep, it is time to say goodbye, but that's only until the next time, next week, around my table when we get to be together. But I love you guys, and until next time, eat lots of plants, get your rest, wear your gloves, wear your mask, and stay home. Vidal has spoken. You heal with a plant-based diet, homeopathy, and detox, of course. Peace. Be healthy, be free, live life.